1, 2, 1, 2. Dobro večer. Dobro večer. Hvala vam svima što ste došli na ovaj jedinstven događaj u Europskoj kući. Moje ime je Miško Stanišić, ja sam direktor organizacije Terraforming i zajedno sa EPNA-om, European Practitioners Network Against Antisemitism, mi organizujemo večerašnji događaj. Večerašnji događaj se odvija na engleskom jeziku, tako da ću odmah pređem na engleski. So tonight's event will be in English, so I'm switching in English, and I would like to invite Ambassador Emanuele Giaufret to greet us in the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just have a very limited role tonight to welcome you at Europska kuća in Belgrade. I'm very happy we can have this event here in Belgrade. I want to thank everyone that worked very hard to make it happen. I also want to thank Katharina von Schnurbein, the European Commission coordinator to combat antisemitism and fostering Jewish life, to be with us today. It was an opportunity for the delegation to make sure that she could spend a couple of days in Serbia and also discover the reality of Jewish community, the heritage of Jewish community in Serbia with many opportunities. So I want to thank again everyone to be here. Europska kuća is the place where we cherish tolerance, human dignity, rights, and I thought these type of discussions really belong here. So thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and this is for you, a little booklet about some words about the Holocaust in Serbia. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Anke Konrad, German ambassador to Serbia, to address us. Thank you.
So, good evening, dobro večer. Dear Mr. Stanišić, dear Miško, Excellencies, dear Ms. von Schnurbein, dear Commissioner. I'm very happy to be here with you today because the issue that we are discussing today is important for us, and I'm very happy to see that, that this discussion in November has a steady place not only in my calendar but also in the calendar of a growing number of people here in Serbia, because the fight against anti-Semitism is a chance for the whole society, and it's a chance for every day of a year and not only on specific days of remembrance. We know, of course, that remembrance is becoming also increasingly important because the survivors of the Holocaust who can tell their own stories will soon no longer be with us. So we need other places, and also, maybe this will also be discussed today, also the internet is a place where this remembrance can be reinforced in the future. We, Germany, we are actively committed to projects that preserve the memory of the Shoah and help draw lessons for the present and future. The federal government is investing only in this year 1 billion euros in combating group-related hatred and anti-Semitism, including specialized police trainings and also campaigns on social media against disinformation. Germany bears a special responsibility in the fight against anti-Semitism in the light of the Holocaust, its enfranchisement, and the murder of 6 million European Jews. Jews are part of our society and must be able to live free from security concerns. The fight against anti-Semitism, racism, homophobia, against all and any form of discrimination, online and offline, is a shared responsibility. Anti-Semitism remains a threat to Europe, to our social cohesion, to our values. In Germany, since the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, we are witnessing anti-Semitism at an unprecedented level, not seen in decades. Every single day we are witnessing how stereotypes, prejudice, hate, and fake news are spread via social media, reaching millions and millions of users in just seconds. And we see this hate being reproduced without a thought, without a question, without a doubt. And we see the results. It is important to strengthen our societies against anti-Semitism. It is important to enable our citizens to reflect on what they hear, to form their own opinion, and not to fall prey to disinformation. Facts, exchange, and open discussions are needed to counter disinformation, also in social media. We must create this space for information and exchange, offline and online. Ignorance, we are all only too much aware, is the best friend of fake news and hatred. We would like to thank Terraforming and the European Network of Practitioners Against Antisemitism for addressing antisemitism in the context of the internet and social media. Just as technological possibilities and user behavior continue to evolve, so too must our methods in the fight against antisemitism and discrimination. The ABC against antisemitism that you have developed is a good example for the kind of tools that are needed. The German government will continue to support your work, and thank you very much for your dedication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now I would like to invite Avivit Bar-Ilan, Israeli Ambassador to Serbia. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Madame von Schnurbein, European Commissioner for Coordination on Combating Antisemitism and Fostering Jewish Life, dear colleagues, ambassadors, dear partners from Terraforming, ladies and gentlemen. As an Israeli Jewish woman and daughter of Holocaust survivors, living in a world that increasingly connected online, I've seen firsthand how anti-Semitism can spread quickly, quietly, and sometimes invisibly. I can't help but feel a deep concern for the younger generation, including my own children, who live much of their lives online, particularly on their smartphones. We live in a time where a tweet, a post, or a video can go viral in seconds, and often those messages are filled with misinformation, stereotypes, or outright hate. Anti-Semitism is no longer something that happens in distant corners of the internet. It's in our feeds, in our comment sections, under our family photos. Since October 7, the biggest massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust, anti-Semitism has been on the rise, with incidents of hate and violence targeting Jewish communities escalating globally, including the online arena. The events of that horrible day have sadly fueled more division and encouraged those who spread harmful stereotypes and conspiracies against Jews. It is no secret that Israel is going through one of the most difficult periods since its establishment, in the fight against an enemy that wants to wipe it off the map. We will not give up, and we will continue to protect the citizens of Israel and their security. Last Friday, we watched in horror and disbelief as images from Amsterdam began to emerge. Scenes of hate and violence against innocent people. The anti-Semitic attacks that erupted in that city on the eve of Kristallnacht commemoration, beginning with assaults on Israeli football fans, serve as a chilling reminder of how a modern-day pogrom against Jewish people looks like. This is an outrage that cannot be ignored. No one should accept this. Jews must feel safe, valued, and protected wherever they go in Europe. The disturbing surge of anti-Semitic incidents around the world must remind us all that our strength lies in our solidarity, education, and action. The rise in hate is met by louder voices standing against it, voices that promote understanding, unity, and respect. This is the reason that during the upcoming presidency of Israel of the International Holocaust Remember Alliance in 2025, the State of Israel will do its utmost to strengthen the organization's mission at a time when Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism are surging across the globe. Before I conclude, I wish to extend my gratitude to Terraforming and to all the organizations, government institutions, educators committed to fostering tolerance and combating discrimination, intolerance, anti-Semitism, and xenophobia. Together, we possess the powers to stand against the hate by speaking out, supporting those targeted, and educating future generations on the true and lasting dangers of anti-Semitism. Hvala vam što ste se okupili na ovoj važnoj tribuni u Belgradu. Nikada više je sada. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now I would like to invite Edward Ferguson, UK Ambassador to Serbia.
Ladies and gentlemen, dame i gospodo, dobro večer, good evening, and I'm very happy to be here with you all tonight. And I'd just like to start by thanking and congratulating Miško and Terraforming for their persistence in organizing these kind of important discussions. I think it has rarely been more important to keep these issues in our minds and to find ways to combat some really alarming trends. Now, as many of you will know, the UK is proud at the moment to be holding the presidency of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, which we will hold until February next year. IHRA, as it's called, is an organization that brings together 35 governments and experts from academia and civil society, including from Serbia, to strengthen, advance, and promote Holocaust education, research, and remembrance worldwide. And in a couple of weeks, we will be gathering everyone in London. Now, our presidency is focused on safeguarding remembrance of the Holocaust and securing the narrative for the future through education of young people, through protecting the facts and safeguarding the record. And this is why we really value and support events like this one that can support and boost educational efforts. Now, I'm looking forward to the discussion later on about effective ways to tackle this very current challenge of contemporary online anti-Semitism. I wouldn't claim to have any particular expertise in this area, but I suspect, like many of you, I do know that my own Twitter feed, certainly through no prompting of my own, has become increasingly toxic in this realm, and that I have personally reported a number of accounts with depressingly limited success in getting them blocked or banned. So it certainly feels to me, in a non-scientific but personal way, that anti-Semitism is gaining ground online. But I think the data more broadly certainly bears that out. So what do we mean by anti-Semitism? Since I'm billed in the program as the IHRA representative, let me remind you of IHRA's own working definition, which was formally adopted by my government in 2016. And the definition is as follows. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, towards Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. And IHRA offers 11 examples of contemporary anti-Semitism, which I think are very helpful, including as we grapple with some of the difficult issues that we face in the modern world. For example, the definition makes clear that drawing comparisons between contemporary Israeli policy with that of the Nazis, or holding Jews collectively responsible for actions of the State of Israel, is anti-Semitic and has no place in our or any society. At the same time, it is also clear that criticism of Israel, similar to that levelled against any other country, cannot be regarded as anti-Semitic. So when we're thinking about this challenge of online anti-Semitism, of course, it's not long these days before we have to consider the implications of AI. It feels to me that the jury is somewhat out, although I'm probably more concerned rather than less concerned about it. The danger I think we face is that just as we reach that point, as was mentioned, when the last living, when the Holocaust will no longer be part of our living history, when the last survivors have left us, along comes AI, with its potential to support Holocaust denial and distortion on massive scale, recasting history to erase the devastating horrors suffered by the Jewish people. But at the same time, AI could be used for good. For example, to track and delete anti-Semitic posts in real time. Now, I would suggest that as we work, and this is a big priority for my government, as we work to try and build in safeguards to the development of AI, to test the algorithms before they go live, actually using anti-Semitism as a test case. Do new algorithms support, or could they risk boosting anti-Semitism, or could they help to combat it? Would be a really healthy and positive way of testing some of these new algorithms before they hit the market in the international systems. Now, I'll say no more on this because, as I say, I'm no expert, and I'm very interested to hear from those who are. So let me just conclude by saying once more that I think the UK has a track record that I think we can stand by in terms of combating and fighting consistently against anti-Semitism, but this is something that we have to do together with allies and partners and with all of us. We have to continue every day to keep fighting against this abhorrent ideology in all its repugnant forms as it is gaining ground around us. We simply cannot afford to be complacent, particularly to this online world and all its implications for good or ill. So with that, I will cede the floor. Thank you very much.
Now, I would just remind you that the Republic of Serbia also adopted the IRA's definition of anti-Semitism in 2021, so it's an excellent tool. It's very important that also we can use it here in our country. Now I would like to invite Katharina von Schnurbein, European Commission's coordinator on countering anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life.
Thank you very much, Miško. Thank you also for persisting in inviting me to your event, and I'm very happy that this year I have the possibility to be here. It's been 2 very intense and good days so far. Tomorrow I will go to Subotica to look at to visit the synagogue there. But I started the visit here at Staro Sajmište to pay tribute to the victims of the Holocaust, to remember the past, and to then also look at current Jewish life, have encounters with the Jewish community, talk to government representatives, to the Commissioner as well, to see how we can together, including here in Serbia, where thankfully you don't have a lot of incidents, but we know there can be anti-Semitism without Jews, conspiracy myths, and in particular the topic that we will face tonight with regards to anti-Semitism online. The vile attacks last week on the Maccabi fans and on Jews in Amsterdam have shown how persistent anti-Semitism is and how quickly it can erupt, and in particular how the internet, and in that case Telegram, could be used to organize these attacks. The attacks were organized before the Maccabi fans arrived. they were very clearly targeted. Yeah. And although, and I think we should be also truthful about that, the behavior of some Maccabi fans was not correct. We cannot tolerate any form of hatred. It is no excuse for hunting down Jews and for expressing this kind of violence that we saw. What was interesting to me in relation to the topic that we're discussing tonight is when I woke up to this in the morning, I made a tweet at 6 o'clock. It's not recommended, but in that case, I knew I wouldn't have time during the day. And it was within minutes that I had a Twitter line which said the Israelis started this. It was an inversion of victim and perpetrators that we know from the Holocaust, that we know from the 7th of October, that we saw, for example, with regards to Corona, where within, I would say, 3 weeks, we suddenly had this explosion of content that said that the Jews created the virus, or that they were going to create a vaccine and would not share it with others, and you know, these ideas, but it was still much slower than the minutes it took to react to a tweet that condemned the incidents in Amsterdam. We know that there will be forever a before and after of the 7th of October. I think not a day goes by where I don't pray and hope that the hostages come home. I think it's a responsibility for us here as well to call for their release and to continue not giving up. It's now more than 400 days that they are in these atrocious conditions. But it's also important to recognize the impact of this 7th of October on the Jewish community here. And I want to be very clear. It started on the 7th of October. It did not start with Israel's reaction on Gaza. On the 7th and 8th of October, we had celebrations in some European capitals of the terrorist attacks by Hamas. And again, this is not something that came overnight. It is a level of anti-Semitism that is present and that erupts, and in this case, in these forms of celebration. So, of course, then afterwards, with the war on Hamas, it has been used as a pretext, but it is not the source of anti-Semitism. People try to use it as a justification, but there is no justification. And as was said by the ambassador, holding Jews here responsible for actions of the state of Israel is not only unacceptable, it's anti-Semitic. And we should be very much aware. And the good thing in this is that when it comes to extremism, whether it is from right-wing, left-wing, or Islamist side, in the end, when it comes to numbers, they are still less than the Democrats in the middle. And I think what will be our responsibility, and for all of those who are here tonight and show their interest and their dedication to this fight, it will be very important in the next months and years to stand up and to speak against anti-Semitism, against any form of hatred. And it is not to do a favor to the Jews only. That would be sufficient. If anti-Semitism is exploding as we see it, we need to act. But it is also because anti-Semitism is a threat to our democracy, to our security, to diversity, to non-discrimination, to equality, to all the values that we hold dear. And it is also for this reason that we need, and so in our own total own interest that we need to address anti-Semitism. And once again, thank you very much to you, Miško, also to Joe Frank for co-organizing this event. I very much look forward to our debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so that there is no confusion, you already got the book. So, yes. And now I would kind of like to invite Brankica Janković, Commissioner for Protection of Equality.
Your Excellencies, Ms. von Schnurbein, Mr. Stanišić, ladies and gentlemen, anti-Semitism, as every other form of discrimination, is a dangerous social phenomenon, and we can say that in its essence, it's much more harmful for society than it is generally perceived, and therefore, if its presentation forms are neglected, they can easily lead to most severe forms of human rights violations, such as violence. And as we know, violence creates more violence, and it goes in vicious circles. It is crucial not to confuse the causes and consequences, reasons and motives. Daily politics is often confused with universal human values defined back in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That can turn our point of view upside down, so we might see inverted reality. It is especially crucial in the context of the challenges that the digital age brings with us, especially having in mind that our whole lives are more and more shifted to the digital space. By its appearance, it often justifies the name that many give it, which is the digital battlefield. And that is why platforms for discussion with emphasis on the digital space like this event are very welcome. So thank you, the organizer, thank you, Miško, and EPNA, and Terraforming, and EU House, our house, for this event. On this battlefield, the challenges are not only direct and easily visible discriminatory statements and posts, but also the hidden ones in the form of GIFs, memes, vlogs, comments, and reactions such as likes and dislikes on platform. Children and young people are at a significantly greater risk of being unknowingly exposed to discrimination, hate speech, and violence on social networks. Continuous exposure to this type of content at a young age, scientists say, can lead to radicalization, which is a serious social issue. In this sense, I remember that Fernand de Waals, the UN Special Rapporteur on minority issues, stated that social networks are poison of individual and collective minds. Therefore, like in all social issues in the digital context, the social networks are most important partners, and I'm extremely glad that the representative of TikTok will be a great part of the next panel. Partnership with tech community is crucial for institutions with the mandate to combat discrimination and protect human rights successfully. Therefore, considering all the challenges, our institutions is directing its effort not only to acting upon complaints of citizens, but also to preventive measures. We organized many seminars and capacity building activities on the topic of recognizing and acting upon discrimination for various stakeholders, such as police, civil servants, judges, and others, which included elements of combating anti-Semitism. Also, we organized seminars with the councils of national minorities, including the Alliance of Jewish Municipalities, as well as a meeting to discuss all the challenges they are facing in our society. In recent years, the Republic of Serbia has taken several important steps in the development of the legal framework when it comes to fostering the memory of the Holocaust and the fight against anti-Semitism. In February 2020, the law on the Staro Sajmište Memorial Center was adopted. In addition, the adoption of the 2016 law on eliminating the consequences of property confiscation of Holocaust victims. Furthermore, the city of Bor allocated funds for the construction of the Holocaust Remembrance Museum. Also, Miško already said, Serbia accepted the non-binding definition of anti-Semitism formulated by IHRA. This is crucial not only to combating anti-Semitism, but also for reinforcing the understanding, remembrance, and commemoration of the genocide of Roma people, especially having in mind that most complaints on the basis of national affiliation are submitted in relation to discrimination of Roma people, especially Roma women. Bearing in mind the history of our regions and the centuries-old coexistence of members of different national culture and ethnic communities, we submitted an initiative to the Ministry of Human and Minority Rights regarding the action plan relating to the improvement of the position of national minorities to envisage appropriate activities in relation to the fight against anti-Semitism in accordance with the adoption strategic framework of the European Union. We stated that it is also necessary to foresee measures against all forms of hate speech that refers to any citizens just because they belong to a certain people or nation. I will also mention several specific but overall rare cases from our practice, such as posters with a swastika and anti-Semitic content in a street in Belgrade, or anti-Semitic and neo-Nazi graffiti in Novi Sad, in connection with which we issued a public warning emphasizing that such action causes damage to our democratic society, which is why it is very important that they always meet with condemnation. We also issued a public warnings when unknown persons broke the glass of the building of the Jewish cemetery in Rooseveltova Street with stones. We also responded immediately to a piece of anti-Semitic graffiti written at the entrance of the Belgrade Fair and around it, as well as on the premises of the Haber organization. In this context, we submitted a recommendation of measures to the company Belgrade Fair and the Municipal Inspectorate to ensure urgent removal of this graffiti from public places. It should be noted that all these graffiti were removed immediately. As for Serbia, the contribution of the Jewish community to the development of our society is invaluable. And the anti-fascist tradition is an integral part of our social being. Consequently, we must continue building a tolerant and safe society that will oppose all forms of revitalization of the Holocaust, because this relativizes suffering of Jews and Roma and Serbs and many others, it attacks both who we are and what they are. There is a global dangerous trend of revision of history, which needs to be addressed on all levels, and on this matter, the role of academic community is crucial. As for all of us, bearing in mind, we can see today that some mistakes of the past are being repeated. Each of us is responsible and obliged to nurture the culture of remembrance that will serve as a warning that Holocaust and all other horrendous suffering of all nations should never happen again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for all the speakers for this part of the evening. Before I invite the panelists, I would kindly ask everybody who spoke to take just 1 minute photo together in front of the stage we were asked by the press, if you don't mind. Thank you so much.
This work? So, I hope this works. I hope you understand me. Perfect. Excellencies, dear guests, friends, comrades, some of you. My name is Joe Frank, and I am the co-founder and director of Dialogue Perspectives. Dialogue Perspectives is the European Practitioners Network Against Antisemitism's umbrella organization. Before we enter into our discussion, I would like to thank everybody for your participation. Tonight, especially, I would like to thank Miško and Terraforming for hosting the European Practitioners Network Against Antisemitism here in Belgrade. It's a great honor for us, and thank you so much. It's been very impressive seeing what you've been able to do in your work here, and we're more than happy to partner with you now and in future. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank our team, Florian, Paulina, and Maila, who've been working tirelessly not only over the past couple of days, but also the past 16 months to build our network. And naturally, I would also like to thank the Federal Foreign Office for their continued support. And I would like to add, as the German government at the moment finds itself in an identity crisis of sorts, I would just like to reiterate continued support. So we've chosen a topic for our panel that is essential not only to reflect but also to act upon: countering anti-Semitism online. And may I just say right at the beginning, I do understand that decorum and so forth often make us say anti-Semitism and xenophobia and all sorts of racism, misogyny, and so on and so forth. Sometimes it's also really just fine to say anti-Semitism. We're deeply grateful for our panelists who will enter into discussions with us tonight. After briefly introducing our panel and some very short preliminary remarks, we'll ask our guests to discuss the topic tonight, and we hope to gain insights from our discussion that can actually move us a step ahead in our common fight against anti-Semitism. So without further ado, let me introduce our guests. First of all, Katharina von Schnurbein. Katharina von Schnurbein was appointed European Commission Coordinator on Combating Antisemitism and Fostering Jewish Life in 2015. Together with her team, she's drafted and is now implementing the EU strategy on combating antisemitism and fostering Jewish life adopted in 2021. And I remember that we first spoke, I believe, about the strategy in 2020, which seems like a conversation we had in a completely different age. For her work against the fight against anti-Semitism, she has received multiple awards, including an honorary doctorate from Ben Gurion University of the Negev in 2024. Jonas Fegert is the head of the House of Participation and senior expert for digital democracy and participation at the FZI Research Center for Information Technology. He's responsible for a whole host of research projects. He and his team focus on societal polarization, the analysis of disinformation, digital citizen participation, and modern digital governance. Jonas also serves as the Deputy Advisory Board Chairman of the Ernst Ludwig Ehrlich Scholarship Fund, providing grants to gifted Jewish students in Germany and throughout Europe. And Jonas is also a member of the Coalition for Pluralistic Public Discourse and an ROI Fellow of the Schusterman Foundation. Friedrich Enders is the Manager for Government Relations and Public Policy at TikTok for Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And we're very grateful to you, Friedrich, for stepping in for your colleague. We're very acutely aware that this is also an expression of your willingness to tackle the issue at hand. Friedrich coordinates the exchange with governments, political actors, and civil society groups to address political and social issues on the platform, with a focus on content regulation, moderation, political education projects. Previously, he worked in trust and safety at TikTok and was involved in developing TikTok's community guidelines. And last but definitely not least, Miško Stanišić, who definitely doesn't need an introduction, but will get one anyway. As director and co-founder of Terraforming, a Novo Sad-based NGO, Miško Stanišić is the driving force and inspirational force behind its long-term strategies and project activities aimed at promoting and improving teaching and learning about the Shoah, while combating antisemitism and other forms of xenophobia. In this case, it's quite right to say so, because that's the purview of your job. These efforts target teachers, archivists, librarians, museum workers, policymakers, and students, both in Serbia and internationally. And Miško, I can say for our network that we're extremely grateful for the work you do, as I said right at the beginning, and only want to emphasize this again. Welcome, Miško, Katharina, Jonas, and Friedrich. So, there's a simple rule about applause. Sometimes it's earned, sometimes not. This wasn't earned. So please, in future, only if it's earned, and otherwise, don't worry. So, dear panelists, distinguished guests, we've heard valuable insights, some valuable insights from tonight's speakers so far. And as a room full of dedicated European practitioners combating anti-Semitism, we're all keenly aware of the challenges we face. Antisemitism has persisted across all major social media platforms, with each exhibiting different forms and intensities of such content. Despite years of policy changes, antisemitism remains widespread, and the events of October 7th, alongside the ongoing and expanding war in Gaza, Lebanon, and parts of Iran, have marked a pivotal moment, one with implications that will reverberate long into the future. Platforms with looser moderation and lenient policies often harbor the most extreme anti-Semitic content, while other platforms, despite efforts to curb extremist content, continue to struggle with conspiracy-fueled narratives and anti-Semitism. While some major platforms have made progress in dismantling organized anti-Semitic groups, they still face significant hurdles in addressing decentralized and informal sources of anti-Semitism. The style and tone of anti-Semitic content continue to evolve, with individuals modifying their language to bypass platform guidelines. This shift, one, for example, from pseudo-academic denial to casual mockery tailored for the internet, highlights the need for a more robust approach to content moderation that also accounts for off-platform influences to more effectively combat the spread of anti-Semitism, and not only profess to do so. The EU faces challenges in regulating online anti-Semitism. Some member states have enacted national laws criminalizing hate speech, including the denial of the Shoah and incitement to hatred based on ethnicity, race, religion, or nationality. For example, Germany and France impose legal consequences for actions promoting hate or condoning crimes against humanity. However, enforcing these laws online has been difficult due to the sheer scale of illegal content and varying illegal frameworks across European countries. Online platforms rely on self-regulation through their terms of service, in line with a EU-initiated code of conduct from 2016, but enforcement remains inconsistent. The Digital Services Act, a EU regulation adopted in 2022, addresses illegal content, transparent advertising, and disinformation, which is a brilliant choice, by the way, but nevertheless. It aims to enhance platform accountability and strengthen content moderation, but does not explicitly designate online anti-Semitism as illegal content. In short, our panel will have to deal with the fact that neither the platforms nor the legislative bodies are doing enough to protect Jews from hatred online, nor do either seem willing to address the issue with enough urgency. Dear friends, guests, excellencies, we've heard more than enough introductory remarks. One closing thought, though, before we then begin with our discussion. It seems vital to reiterate that anti-Semitism is not an abstract concept, right? So if we talk about anti-Semitism online, it's not an abstract concept or an ideology without victims. Anti-Semitism, or what we may more aptly call Jew hatred, has real, profound consequences for individuals and poses a grave danger to communities. This seems to somehow get lost when we speak about anti-Semitism on evenings like this. Ambassador Bar-Ilan reminded us earlier of the anti-Semitic attacks in Amsterdam, and of course, if we look throughout Europe, this is merely one example, and I'm quite sure that as we speak, somewhere there is an anti-Semitic attack in some shape or form happening across Europe right now. Ambassador Ferguson spoke of the UK's current role in leading the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and naturally, we still also mustn't forget that anti-Semitism, while the UK, which is a shame for most Britons, is no longer part of the EU, still anti-Semitism is also deeply woven into the political I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought, just because your smile was so charming. Into the political sorry, again, I will look at someone else who's not that charming. I'll look at myself. Into the political fabric of the United Kingdom. So we see now a political party in power who's been battling and fight with itself over how to address anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. And I did mention earlier on the identity crisis of Germany. This crisis may also lead to a right-wing and right-wing extremist government we'll see on February 23rd. And as we heard earlier today, the local Jewish community here in Belgrade faces daily struggles with anti-Semitism, and one striking comment captured the impact of anti-Semitism here in the city that we're speaking in right now, that the community has felt compelled to pause collaborations with non-Jewish civil society partners. And that is quite horrific. This is where we stand, and today, and it underlines the urgent need for collective concrete action. Let's begin our discussion. So, as Fidel Castro said to Mother Teresa, let's engage in some role play. Jonas, imagine you're
Teresa or Fidel Castro?
Imagine you're a platform operator. Your platform is called Y or Marta or Toktik or WeTube. Audience brings you income through advertising partners. Of course, you need a lot of audience. Since October 7th, 2023, a wave of anti-Semitism has been breaking, and you know that anti-Semitic posts will also occur in your, on your platform, probably also have to occur on your platform in order to reach those who are currently surfing this wave. How do you, as a platform operator, ensure that anti-Semitic posts get space on your platform?
So if I would be in Friedrich's role, I would say I'm ensuring that, of course, there's no space for anti-Semitism on our platform. But like from a business model point of view, I'm not so sure if it's that of an urgent matter on a global scale. I think then it really depends on the local market, and if anti-Semitism becomes on this local market a public affairs issue, so that I would think that it needs to be taken care of in some way, with content moderation or with some policies or with some kind of reaching out to the local Jewish communities or whatsoever. But in general terms, if we talk about anti-Semitism, who are the victims of anti-Semitism? I mean, a platform like TikTok, for example, has 1 billion users. X and the others also have a lot of users. The share of Jewish users who become then victims of anti-Semitism are so little compared to the general target groups of those platforms and compared to the general business model of the platform, that I would argue that it's not of that importance to take care of it.
Friedrich, maybe you can also already jump in there, right? So we're at one decisive point, namely handling profit versus policy conflicts, right? So platforms have face pressure to retain engagement, which can deter the removal of controversial content. So how does your platform actually balance financial considerations with the ethical responsibility to combat anti-Semitic content?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for the invitation to put that from our point of view. I think I would put it a bit different from Jonas there, because from our point of view, we really don't want that content, right? It's content that is morally wrong, and it's also not enticing advertisers. So how do platforms make money? People advertise, at least major platforms, advertising money, and no advertiser wants to have their advertisement next to anti-Semitic posts, next to hate-infused posts, next to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, right? So we have a business incentive as well as a moral incentive not to let anti-Semitism run wild on the platform, which is why we have very clear policies that don't tolerate, that don't allow anti-Semitism, hateful ideologies of many kinds. And we are, in fact, the only major platform today to publicly have this anti-Semitism as a hateful ideology listed in our community guidelines.
I mean, but that sounds brilliant. So that means that basically, Katharina, you could find someone within the framework of TikTok to then actually find a mode of not only exerting pressure by drawing up resolutions, but actually coming up with a legal framework that ensures that anti-Semitism isn't as rampant on social media platforms. And it sounded to me like Friedrich would be part of such a conversation in trying to find the proper legal framework. If that were the case, we would have one success already tonight, one on which we could build. Let's see what else we can reach.
Yeah, I think we should talk afterwards. No, but with regards to the legal framework, if we put the DSA into a nutshell, actually what it requests from platforms is to examine how their business model poses a danger to democracy, and the very large platforms, which are those platforms that have more than 45 million users, have to put forward to the Commission not only that analysis, but also how they are going to mitigate the challenges. And as you said, the legislation is from 2022. We are implementing it at the moment, and in fact, as a reaction to 7th of October and the proliferation of terrorist content, of hateful content, of obviously anti-Semitic content, On the 10th of October, the Commission opened an infringement procedure against X, and then has since opened other infringements against other platforms. Now, you can of course say, what does that change on the platform as such? But for those who know European procedures, a legislation that is adopted in 2022 and we open an infringement in 2023, this is almost speed of light, because usually we give time for the implementation. And you know, in this case we didn't wait, because it is very important. And I think that this legislation has teeth also because at the end can be up to 6% of the global revenue of a platform as fine. So I know this is not the answer you want to hear. Is one more answer that you don't want to hear, and that is that not every form of anti-Semitism online is anti-Semitic. We don't like it, but this is the reality. So within freedom of speech, certain expressions, and this is often the case when it comes, for example, to Israel-related anti-Semitism, are not necessarily illegal. It depends on context, and it depends on the frame in which things are being said and posted. What we do know is that hate speech, inciting to violence, is illegal. And there we have to be much stronger and stricter, is that what is illegal offline is also illegal online and needs to be prosecuted. And if we start with this in the current legal framework and we simply start prosecuting what is illegal online, there will be a huge change already with regards to the impact. And Germany, for example, just actually when I was flying here, I saw the news that Germany had undergone a concerted action to knock on the doors and how do you say, the police actually took action against users of hate speech, and they took them in custody. So this is, I think, where we are now. We need the prosecution, and we need better enforcement of the legislation by the platforms in line with legislation that we have already. And I don't want to say that legislation cannot improve. It always can, but we have already a lot of instruments in place that need to be used.
No need to apologize. It's always, I mean, look, there's a, I think it's always a question of urgency. And of course, as someone working at an NGO trying to combat anti-Semitism, the urgency with which we feel the necessity to actually do something may be higher than other people's sense of urgency. And I don't feel that that bureaucracy is a very effective shield, while at the same time the lapse in time of enacting legislation also can be harmful. I was about to say cost lives, and it's probably what I actually mean, but there you go. Sometimes, how did you say it? Not everything that's anti-Semitic is anti-Semitic. I would say
not everything that is anti-Semitic is illegal.
Right.
And this is, I know it's problematic for us, because we say in our strategy towards an EU free from anti-Semitism. That's why we need to distinguish anti-Semitic content that may not be illegal, but needs counter-speech and needs moderation. Yeah, and I think that TikTok has a clear policy. Facebook has now also a clear policy, and there has been progress, but I fully agree with you with regards to the urgency. I would also see things, prefer to see things enacted much quicker because they do cost lives.
Yeah. I'd like to come back to this policy thing, but Miško, I saw you inhaling quite often as though you wanted to add something, so I'll just not pose a question, but say, jump in.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just want to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here and also pull down this discussion from the stratosphere of clouds to where we are here in Serbia. This is a little bit of my task, isn't it? So traditional media, you know, is also part of the online content. And I would say that the question is, for me, is rather where the content is produced and how come that the anti-Semitic content is out there rather than what to do when it's already there. I mean, this is a little bit of thinking of an educator, you know. And I think that the questions that I would like to see in regard to responsibility of the media in general and social media and online media in particular is the responsibility for the media literacy. So who is in charge of developing media literacy among population, not only among young people, but in general, because I think that media literacy is very closely connected to our democratic rights and the implementation of our democratic rights more and more nowadays. So back to the traditional media, I would say that like a lot of content produced in traditional media is ending up, of course, in online media and social media. There is already a blur. So I'm not saying that Facebook is producing content, it's just a platform. But the media outlets that I'm talking about, like professional, traditional media, they are creating content. And a lot of time, this content, in a case of my country, could be anti-Semitic. Could be directly anti-Semitic, not a little bit discreetly or in different ways. And as a result of that, in general, we have a huge problem to openly discuss anti-Semitism in Serbia, that there is, I would say that officials are generally reluctant to even use the term anti-Semitism. Of course, there is almost no measures that could be implemented against the content in the media that might be anti-Semitic. And as a result, these things are coming to online, and they are already kind of approved, you know, because it's not coming from the strange corridors of online media. You could see the same title and the content on a street, you know, where they're selling newspapers, or on television. So again, I would say that our defense should not be regulations in terms of, I mean, it should be also regulations against hate speech or whatever could be anti-Semitic, or at least counter-speech when it's not illegal formally. But again, I think that the best solution is building capacities of consumers, of citizens, to identify, counter, and debunk anti-Semitic narratives. And I think that if we could share this responsibility with professional media and online media somehow, it would be really, really helpful.
Hmm.
Thought on media literacy. Sorry. Because I think it's actually a very important one, and sometimes gets lost a little bit in discussing who's at fault for anti-Semitism online. And you know, I definitely 100% agree that platforms do have a responsibility to curb online anti-Semitism, right? So having the right policies, iterating them, adapting them to an ever dynamic field and developing field to catch content, enforcing these guidelines rigorously and working with partners, all that's important. But we also have a responsibility to foster and support media literacy and education in this regard. And that can be sort of partnerships with creators, for example, that we do, where we bring creators together with Holocaust survivors to create content, or where we onboard Holocaust educational institutions. Just last week I was in Poland, in Auschwitz actually, with a bunch of 30 creators from across the globe, from institutions, to create that content, to create a space, because TikTok itself does not create content, but we have a responsibility, in my view, to support educators that do. And one very successful measure that we have, and that's more on the product side, is whenever you search for a keyword that's related to the Holocaust, or that you see a video that's related to the Holocaust, we have a little information banner. We call it a search intervention. When you search for a keyword, the first thing that pops up is that intervention. Users that click on it will go directly to aboutholocaust.org by the WJC and UNESCO to see facts about the Holocaust, right? So just to say that this is something that we've rolled out, and I'm very pleased to say that we will be rolling this out for Serbia as well, starting next year.
Right. I mean, okay. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought.
No, you didn't. You enriched my train of thought. When I went to school, which is a long time ago, I remember there was a boy in my year that also sold drugs. I naturally steered clear of him. But I do remember him also saying, don't take too much. Take like maybe 1 gram or maybe 2 grams. And it seems to me like this argument is slightly, I mean, it's slightly ironic because the model of many platforms relies on media illiteracy. I'm not saying TikTok does especially, but a lot of online media, social media platforms rely on media illiteracy for their profit, which then sounds slightly ironic, saying let's engage in more media literacy.
How so?
Well,
why do platforms rely on media illiteracy?
Well, one of the main things in all that you engage in is that you actually know what you're dealing with, right? So you actually know how, for example, you buy a car or you don't, you ride a bike. You basically know how a bike works. You basically know how a car works. You basically also know what the company selling the car to you actually wants from you. It's the same with traditional media too. You also know what certain media outlets stand for politically. You have a basic idea of what's going on, and you're the customer of this of a service that you consume.
In this case,
yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I mean, in this case, I think we have to be clear that the customer is those who are selling ads on those platforms. I mean, the business model is like the user is not the customer of those platforms. It's those who are selling ads via those platforms. So what you said earlier, Friedrich, I think it's just not true for many of those platforms out there. And there are studies about, for example, Twitter, when it still was Twitter, on how successful next to hateful content, anti-Semitic, anti-queer content, advertisement could be. Advertisements for Amazon and other, for the German Telekom, T-Mobile, whatsoever. So how successful this content could be, because in the end, for the platform operator, it's just important to keep the user as long as possible on the platform. And of course, that works well with negative emotionalization. And I opened up TikTok, for example, today for just 3 or 5 minutes, and the amount of like somehow hateful content, AfD videos, like this right-wing extremist party in Germany, which were shared, Russian kind of pro-Russian disinformation, and so on, popped up in a very short amount of time, which of course caused a lot of emotions and also some interest to go on. But that's exactly how those platform operators work. And I totally agree that media literacy is extremely important, and we need more education on media literacy. I just think that this kind of tokenist approach towards literacy, like inviting content creators to come to Auschwitz. I mean, of course, it's important that you have this content on TikTok, but it seems so absurd if I talk to my friends and family of what like Jews are at the moment experiencing on online platforms like TikTok. So, yeah.
Miško, how is that actually on the ground, right? So one of the things that we pride ourselves in with the European Practitioners Network Against Antisemitism is actually that we're all sort of hands-on people, right? Actually working on the ground against antisemitism.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I would like to stand in defense of poor online social media platforms in this sense that they did not really started this thing, you know? I was on a conference this summer where one of the topics was this AI, have you heard of it? Like, it's a very dangerous thing, obviously. And they were talking about, like, you know, it's going to be this, and like there will be these conspiracies, and they will start producing things, lies, and so on. I told them, like, have you heard there were these 3 Jews that met in secrecy, you know? They wrote some things and it became protocols. Have you ever heard of that thing? So it happened more than 100 years ago, 120 or something, you know? There were no internet at that time, so propaganda and lies and production of anti-Semitic lies is quite very old. And we have a lot of experiences, unfortunately, meeting lies about the Jews, you know? So this is really nothing new. So let's just agree that this is really nothing new. What's new is medium, you know, it's a format. Like now we have a digital format, which is very fast. You can spread this all around the world, very easy. Yeah, it's quite powerful, but it was as powerful as Gutenberg's printing machine, you know. So I mean, those things are really not new. What is new is that we need, well, maybe this is an opportunity. We can get together in a united front against it, as this is being presenting all around the world. Again, I think that information, in terms of understanding what is true and how can I distinguish what's propaganda and what's true, it's not relying on online spheres. It's not only there, it's all around us, on television, in the newspapers, in a corridor when you meet your coworker and what he or she tells you, and how, I mean, how do you know what's true and what's not true in common life? Why would it be more complicated in the digital sphere? Yeah, there are photographs, there are things that are produced, but in general, it's more or less common sense. So again, I think that working for media literacy in general is really the most important step here. I'm very happy to cooperate with social media platforms on this, because there is a power of spreading information there, but it's really not only their responsibility. There is obviously ethics and moral in business, in any business. You know, if you're selling ice cream made of bad milk, then maybe you still made some money, but you poison people. So, I mean, if you're spreading poisoned information, it's also something that should be punished by in different ways, both the users, but also by law. But again, it is up to us, which is also the name of our project, but it is really up to us to recognize everybody in society who can work together on building this wall against disinformation, and in the end of the day, it is a danger for the entire society. I also want to say this, it's not only about the Jews. Of course, Jews are first in the line, but this is really important to understand that we are not doing this because of some third person. We are doing this to protect really the basis of our democracy.
Katharina, I'm sorry, just for the, just because there have been so many male voices, Katharina, please.
Thank you. I have a big advantage now. Actually, great. No, Miško, you said something, I think, to the core of it, which is truth. The fact that we should recognize what is true and what are correct facts and what are incorrect facts. And this seems to become more and more difficult. And it has to do with social media, because because, and we see that around, for example, the Israel war on Hamas, how messages are twisted, and we saw it now again with Amsterdam, how quickly this goes and how it remains online, and there is no, Orwell truth police who tells us what is right, what is wrong. And this idea of alternative facts is a product of social media in the end. I agree that someone needs to put this content online in the very start, but it becomes, it gets a life of its own in a speed that is, I think with trying to work against it and standing up against it, without having the help of algorithms to clean the environment, is very difficult. And there I really think that the platforms have a responsibility in their own interest, because if democracy goes down, it will also create very problematic situation for all the platforms.
I didn't say that platforms don't have any responsibility.
I agree. But this
neither did I, by the way. Neither did I.
I'm not saying that nobody.
I did. Come on. Friedrich, did you want to jump on that thought?
I mean, I'm happy to jump on the thought because we are aware of this responsibility, and we are enforcing our guidelines. It's not like we have these guidelines and now we're waiting for European regulation to catch up and send us reports, right? Because the vast majority of what we remove, over 90% of what we remove from the platform, we remove proactively. We find ourselves and we remove, and to a large majority of the time, without anybody having seen it and without people having to report it to us, right? So that's also part of the truth. And just in the second quarter of this year, we removed over 178 million videos just in one quarter. But around 5% of that is hate speech. So hate speech and hateful ideologies and content is not the only issue that's pertaining to platforms. There's a lot of, we are a mirror of society in a way, right? But we are actively taking this responsibility at hand. And it's also because what I said about advertisers, and I can't speak for other platforms, Jonas, but I know very well that to us, a lot of concerned advertisers are approaching us every week, concerned about what will happen, what their content will be next to when they are on TikTok, right? So I think there's an element of that as well. Maybe to conclude on the media literacy question, I think, while of course it's just a bunch of creators who are visiting a concentration camp memorial and creating content, maybe that's not the most important part of our responsibility, not the most important scale. But it's important to remember that we don't produce content. And if these actors are not on TikTok, it doesn't mean that other actors, bad actors, won't be there either, right? So as Katharina said, not all stuff that's on TikTok that we don't like is illegal or is violating our guidelines. For example, right-wing parties, not everything they do on TikTok is something that we can remove, and we have to defend all our moderation decisions in front of courts, right? So we have to be sure of what we're moderating. Therefore, it is important that alternative voices, democratic voices, voices that spread the facts and dignified information about Jewish life are on the platform as well and are available to users on the platform.
But I think, like what you said earlier, like taking control of some platform mechanisms. If you do some searches, you end up at a fact-checked article on a certain topics. That's, in the end, much more important, I would say, than boosting a few content creators through giving them the literacy. And I think I just have a problem with leaving behind this more scientific academic perspective. I think it's like how this fight feels like from a Jewish community point of view. It's not like an equal battle. We are facing state actors who are running like very much who are running big-scale disinformation campaigns on certain topics. For example, what appeared on October 8th, before the actual war in Gaza began, calling it a genocide, it was an organized campaign. When we talked to people who worked at YouTube, they deleted 2/3 of this content. They deleted in this first week, around 30,000 comments. They think came from state-driven accounts by China. There are other state actors who are also very active when it comes to commenting, to creating content, and so on. And I think it's just not like an even battle which we can win through adding more content, through creating new narratives on those platforms. It just doesn't feel equal, and that's why also a lot of users in this community leave those platforms, and that feels extremely different from what it used to be, where those platforms used to be also deliberative platforms where people also went to, if they couldn't organize locally, they went to find others who have the same, post the same questions and so on. And that changed, and I actually don't know why. I mean, maybe you have an idea why. Maybe the platforms are just different from what they used to be, but there must be a reason, right?
I mean, I can't speak for your experience on TikTok, but when I open my TikTok, and you will not be surprised that I say that, I see, you know, I didn't actually see much of the Gaza conflict on my TikTok, because that's just not what I'm watching on TikTok. When I'm on TikTok after work, I don't engage necessarily with political information. So I have a lot of book talk, for example, on my feed, people going viral with recommending books. And we have a real impact on the book sales because of TikTok. That's not, you know, hateful content. That's powerful educational content bringing people to read more. So I would, you know, I'm not diminishing your experience on the platform, and I believe you that when you say that you saw problematic content. But it's not like, you know, we are just standing by idly. We have a group of more than 40,000 people in TikTok just looking after platform safety. And we have a dedicated team that looks after such covert influence networks.
And are they receiving also training on anti-Semitism? Because, for example, there was this case in 2023 already, and beginning of this year, with like content moderation teams where there were leaks just about like very problematic anti-Semitic statements coming from content moderation teams inside TikTok. And of course that's a problem. And then I asked myself, is there like a corporate atmosphere which is taking care of proper literacy?
Yeah. I mean, we have constant anti-bias trainings. We were also part of the Yad Vashem enrichment training, for example, trainings by the Anti-Defamation League. That's constant training to our moderation teams. We constantly overhaul trainings and train them in a new way. And we recently, post 7th of October, 1 year after, we did a quality check and you know, saw that anti-bias training specifically in this area had led to a 13% increase in moderation quality specifically, right? So it's important that we do this all the time, but as I said, our moderation system isn't perfect.
Okay, you know? Let's just maybe move on, right? So I was just, because the ADL is being mentioned very often, and rightly so, because of their extremely important work. It's interesting to see they just published some new research a week ago now about the reporting anti-Semitic content post October 7th. On how social media platforms respond to reports of anti-Semitic content. And the interesting thing, at least from this, and I'm sure we'll find a way to share the report, otherwise just Google, or what's the other thing called? Oh, whatever, just Google ADL report anti-Semitic content post 10/7, and you'll find something that's quite interesting actually, namely that the share of content actually actioned upon is when it's flagged by a so-called trusted flagger. It lies by about 90%, as he says, and I think that's That is an impressive number, especially if you compare it to another platform, namely X, which is at 20%, right? So a 70% gap is a very large gap. But only 6.3% when reported by an individual user, right, a regular user, which then again opens up this field of responsibilities, right? So when I flag content as anti-Semitic, if 100 people flag something as anti-Semitic, only 6.3 are actually, 6 people are actually heard, then that does also speak to the inefficiency of the policies that are in place. Again, TikTok, just because, I mean, it's clear, you must also know this from your job all the time, so I won't apologize too much, but TikTok is still top of the list here with 6.3%, right? Facebook, share of content actioned when reported by a regular user is at 0%, right? So whenever and that's a lesson that also, literacy also sometimes means knowing when what you do is useless, senseless, right? So one learning that we have is if you face anti-Semitism on Facebook, don't bother because no one will will actually do something about it. I mean, literacy always goes in different ways. But let's move ahead from here and try and find a different angle and try and think about also social media platforms, not necessarily only as sales tools for the publishing industry, which I support wholeheartedly, but maybe also as, why can't we rethink these platforms as real tools against anti-Semitism? Not always only ask ourselves, how can we fight anti-Semitism on the platforms, but how can we employ this very obviously powerful tool for good? And and that would be something I'd be just really interested in hearing, Friedrich, whether you have ideas around this, and not just, counter-arguments is always, they always seem like something, well, I mean, in reality, they always are. They are reactive, right? So we have to find something to counter something that's already out there in the public sphere. But is there something proactive that we can do? Is there some way that social media platforms can also see themselves as having this as their core identity to do good in the world? Is that a possibility? And maybe let's see, what can we do to make this happen? And I'm sure, Katharina, that you have ideas on this as well, in trying to, not only to work with legislation, but also in working with persuasion, for example. Or the simple persuasion is, why create a platform that does so much harm? How can we change this platform to do more good than harm? Let's begin with more good than harm and then work towards employing it as a tool for good in the world. Ideas, Friedrich?
I mean, obviously I would argue that we're already doing more good than harm. When you look at the amount of content that is removed because it's violating our guidelines, this is only 1% of all the content being uploaded in one quarter is what we remove because it's violating our guidelines. I'm not saying we're catching everything, but my point is, TikTok is a place for entertainment, is a place for comedy, but it's also a mirror of society in a way. And in this regards, I would start from there. I'm very open to hear also thoughts on how we can, craft better programs and also maybe have some product changes in a way that would bring us forward. Obviously, I think linking facts to the Holocaust to every video that talks about the Holocaust has a strong impact, not only for bringing these facts, but also for people who want to spread things that are maybe borderline. And maybe we don't catch that it's anti-Semitic or hateful, but they will still have a banner on their video saying, here are, by the way, the facts about the Holocaust, right? So very happy to discuss and have ideas on this. I'm just going to caveat it a little bit by saying, we're always open and looking forward to see how we can promote tolerance and fight hate on TikTok. But we are also in a tightly regulated space now. It's not so easy to say, well, look, we'll just put all the good results by a certain editor at the top of the search anymore. you know, that we also have to keep in mind that platforms cannot do whatever they want in terms of product changes and in terms of their business as well.
Well, there's one aspect that I would like to add to this, which I don't really understand, and maybe you can enlighten, is why content that is illegal in the EU and therefore seen as harmful, or other way around, it's seen as harmful and therefore it's illegal. Why is it only removed for the EU? Why don't you just say, then let's remove it for the whole world? And you know, it would, I think that would significantly change. Just because it's, you know, no other country will tell you, but you have to leave this on because this is covered by free speech. Most likely they will not. Yeah. So why can't you just remove it? If you remove it for the EU, even if it originates outside the EU, because you have to remove as a geo-blocking, why can it just not be removed completely?
Yeah, I think that maybe that's a little bit of a misunderstanding of how our moderation works, because if something is violating our community standards, we do remove it globally. So anything that is hateful ideology, that is purporting some stereotypes about Jewish people, that is purporting some conspiracy theories, that's not something that we would just consider because it's illegal. What we remove only in the EU is if something is illegal in the EU but does not meet our community standards. But in the area of hate and anti-Semitism, I think there's very little, if not no, content examples of where this would not be removed globally as well.
Miško, do you have an idea? I want to get back to this. How can we work together with platforms not only in fighting something, but standing for something?
Yes, I have a lot of ideas. But I would like to say that first, I don't think that these platforms are some evil pirates spreading, you know, terrible content and they are there for the, you know, devil's work or whatever. I think that we should hold them for the same standards as any company in the world, you know? Do we expect that Shell or British Petroleum do more good than bad? And who will, you know, decide what is good and what is bad, and IKEA or whatever company in the world? I mean, I understand, of course, the difference of impact to society between TikTok and Facebook and British Petroleum or from some other country. But I mean, you know, I think that we should in general impose same standards to any business in the world. And there should be some regulations, and we are about to regulate a lot of things. One of the reasons to become member of EU, for instance, which is, we are a small country, you know, Serbia, and a lot of our decision makers are not thinking about like what to do about social media, because like who cares what Serbia thinks, and how can we impact it? Well, becoming a member of a broader family is a great idea, for instance. But besides saying that they're not per se some terrible force, they are basically empty shells that others are filling with content. And it's really similar to saying that television is terrible. Well, it's just a medium, it's a format. And the programs that are on television should be regulated so that we are not harming our children, or like this is 12 years, you know, yeah, and 16 years old. But again, I'm saying that I'm interested very much in the things that we could do. We could objectively do, like what can we in Serbia really do about TikTok or whatever. And I'm interested in the moment where the content is created, which will become eventually a part of social media world. And there is a lot we could do. There is a lot we could do here, because a lot of this content is not starting from the social media, not starting from a digital world. And again, I think that both regulations, but also education are crucial there. But final thought, I think that the big ghost AI is actually our future best friend. I think that AI will help us the most to identify harmful content, to identify anti-Semitism, it is perfect tool for that. Like, you train AI to identify it, and because you cannot, search through all the, I don't know how you do it, but there are, you say like you catch 1%, but there is probably more. Well, having AI algorithms recognizing those things, this will be our best friend in identifying AI-produced lies, etc. So this might sound like some science fiction, but I think we're talking about just a couple of years in future that we will have it. Yeah, of course. I mean, this is really not some genius thought. It's just a logical thinking, really. And I'm still interested in where we can work together on the moment between these contents are being both off and online or in traditional media, etc. And I think that this is where our country and the players and actors here could actually make an impact. There are other ways that others could do, but this is where I see a possibility.
Right. I think this is a very important point, because, and that's actually why I'm very happy to be here and have this discussion, because let's face it, for every moderation system, global moderation system, local languages and coded emoji codes or language codes in a local nuanced way is going to be a challenge, right? So we're always becoming better when we have local partners who can support us with increasing our efficiency, with pointing out certain trends in society that maybe we haven't caught up yet in the policy team, right? We have experts globally, but we are really seeing that whenever we work with external experts on the ground together, that we become better.
Just briefly on AI, Jonas, what was the name of the German large language model? Aleph Alpha.
Aleph Alpha.
Now, it's quite interesting because a German large language model, surprise, surprise, when it was unveiled, turned out to be enormously anti-Semitic, right? So that's not necessarily our best friend, but I do agree, of course, that we need to be part of the discussion of the development of these tools and also the question of how they're actually implemented. And I still want to, still would really appreciate one idea on how to make use of the platforms in a more positive way. Because I do think that there must be something there. And of course, the accountability of every single company is the same. Were IKEA to have a furniture brand or pajamas in the style of, you can think of whatever kind of obscene image comes to your mind, then of course we would ask them to be accountable as well. The question is, though, if this empty shell is the great excuse of all social media platforms so far in saying we're not publishers. Maybe that's the first point to change, to make accountability to actually create some accountability. But this
is happening with the DSA. They have to disclose their algorithms to the Commission, the very large platforms, the other ones on national level, and to show how these algorithms will not perpetuate hate. So I know that we're in the very beginning of implementing this, but the idea would be just that, and I know it's not happening because I see it on my own lines as well, yeah, that at the moment the positive content simply is not pushed like the negative one.
Sure. But I mean, the elephant in the room is X at the moment, right? It's and hopefully we can all agree that it's not an empty shelf. And I also don't like the role of pointing towards platforms all the time and their responsibility towards the society. But it's like it's clear that the person who owns this platform used it to advocate for one candidate in the US election and so on, thereby also spreading a lot of conspiracy theories, harmful content whatsoever, and it just continues, and it will continue the next years. So just wanted to make aware of the fact that this whole theory of neutral platform operators it's just not true. They are not neutral in how they engineer and design their platform mechanisms. And there, of course, we need the transparency, which luckily the EU is advocating for, or somehow is something doing at. But the DSA, how it's implemented yet, doesn't create this transparency, at least not for researchers to really have a closer look at the platform algorithms and to have a closer look at the mechanisms who then lead also to someone like Elon Musk being not only extremely successful on his platform because it's so shared so much on his platform, but also, as researchers recently found out, because apparently they tweet also a little bit on the platform to just foster his content before the election.
If I just may respond, because when I say empty shell, I mean on a technological aspect of it. Of course, now when you start feeling with the content in a certain way,
it's not the technology. No, it's the platform mechanism itself. Like, we have no transparency whatsoever how TikTok's algorithm work, how X algorithms work. We don't have any transparency. We don't know in which favor they push content up on your timeline. We just don't see it. I mean, in the case of X, it's now even subscription-based. You can pay for an account where your content gets displayed up on the list. It's perfect for the Iranian regime, for example, to expel the whole protest movement from its platform, and so on. So,
but that's exactly what I'm saying, that what Katharina said, that now the next step is not the technology, but the regulations. And this is where I wanted to say, like, there is a technology, okay, it's not transparent, but like it's not about the technology itself, it's about the regulations, like what do you do with it? What content do you put there? Because you could, as you are trying to suggest, put it in for good as well.
Sure. But part of media literacy is also data literacy and technology literacy, and then we also have to talk about the algorithms and how they work.
Okay, look, again, transparency, I think, is something that we can take away here. I do appreciate that size from this side of this room make quite transparent that our conversation is coming to a close, or at least the wish is there for our conversation to come to a close. I will not let you go until I have one idea of how we can use these platforms for good. There's the practitioners network itself will come up with a session just on this, and then we'll come to you, Friedrich, and to you, Katharina, with ideas on what we can do to actually make a difference here. Because, and I think that's part of the whole frustration that we feel as practitioners in the field. What we do has real life consequences, right? So if whatever our programming is, the individual programming of each and every member of the European Practitioners Network Against Antisemitism, that is a mouthful, but there you go. Whatever each and every member does has real life consequences, is working for the good of first the Jewish community, of course, but also for pluralistic democratic societies in general, right? So Miško, I can only underscore what you said earlier on. It's the work that we're doing, even though it says anti-Semitism everywhere, is not just work against anti-Semitism, it's also for plural democracies. And we do achieve results. And it seems that on this level, we're lagging behind. So it would be great, Friedrich, if we could invite you again to a session in which we just dedicate to this one question. Seeing that they are forces in the world, let's try and make the platforms into forces for good, and maybe you can also help us then approach other platforms. And I have to say, it is a very ungrateful role in which you're in, and that you've not only stepped in for your colleague, but now also been willing to have this kind of conversation. Does speak a lot to to your own responsibility and the responsibility you're taking. So thank you very much. Katharina, thank you very much for your ongoing work in the field. We, as you know, we rely on your work heavily, and we're very grateful that your voice is heard when it comes to things like the DSA. That's also not something to be taken for granted, and we wish you, of course, all the best for the future endeavors. Also seeing as the strategy against anti-Semitism in the EU was, of course, devised before October 7th. How to now adapt it to the increased situation is a challenge that I believe that all of us would also like to be part of in assisting in assisting you as far as we can and as much as we can. So just that as an offer from here. Miško, I will not thank you for a third time, but maybe a fourth and a fifth. But ask you to keep up your work, and just to say how privileged we are to have you as part of our network, and to also say that one can see in your work on a national level that your ideas also transfer onto the level that we have in this European context, that it's by no means a small voice, but a very important voice to our work. Jonas, thank you for bringing your expertise in the field. There are a lot of discussions that we also need to continue, and you've enriched our work here as always. So thank you very much to all of our panelists. Thank you again, Your Excellencies, esteemed guests, colleagues, friends, and comrades, for coming tonight. Please be part of the conversation as we move on over the next few months and also the next years. We, as I said, continued support. We will need all of you, right? So it's not a question of just, the question of responsibility is one that one always has to ask oneself. And we will need each and every one of you to realize our goals, and we look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you again to the team. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much to the House here for hosting us. And let's continue our conversation and bring about more good in the world. Thank you very much.